Hello, guys, and welcome back to the HalfTimeCuppa Football Manager podcast with myself, IJ011, and my co-host, Charlie Pumfrey, aka Pump3 on Twitch. Can't speak. How are you doing, Charlie?
I'm doing very well. That bodes well, IJ, that you managed to get through the first sort of 15 seconds there.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Today we're joined by another unbelievable guest. It's the man himself. It's Foxy. How are you doing, mate?
I'm grand, yeah. You?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Charlie, would you like to introduce our incredible guest?
Well, I think like our last few guests, to be honest, we've been astounded by the sort of guests we've managed to get on. And I think this keeps the bar equally high, if not raising it. FoxInTheBoxFM, I mean, you'll know him from being a magnificent Twitch streamer, from saves with Casapia, and at the moment with Inter Berlin. If you want to go and find more about him, all his links will be down below. I mean, if you've managed to find your way here, I feel like the name alone will be enough to give you that intro. But I mean, we're going to jump more into that, into the background story and where we are now. I think that'll be where we sort of end up. But I mean, going back to that very beginning, if we're ready for us to jump straight in.
Yeah, we'll go for it.
To jump straight to the deep end. If you were sort of asked to give a bit of an origin story of your time in football, I know we've spoken a little bit actually before the pod was getting going. If you had to give sort of your origin story, where would you begin? Where does your football story begin?
Okay, well, I guess with everybody, being a very young grassroots Sunday League football player who thought they were some superstar of their age, and I started with a local grassroots team, nothing special. I was never really like a football fan. I was like of a team. I was just a fan in general. I grew up watching Liverpool and Robbie Fowler and going to Highfield Road at Coventry because my uncle was a huge fan and ran a massive fan site, which was really successful. But I didn't ever affiliate to any team. I just liked being around football. And from quite an early age, because of that uncle and going to watch real life football at Highfield Road, which was a absolute car crash in itself, by the way, because Coventry were up and down like a yo-yo. Battling relegation one year and then doing well the next and so on. He played Football Manager and then that was introduced quite early. I'd say I was probably around about 9 to 10 years old when I first played a Championship Manager, or in conjunction with him playing it and me watching. So that was introduced really, really, really early. And from as early as I can remember, I would always play, because I couldn't play Football Manager or Championship Manager because I didn't understand it, because it was too complicated. Even then, it was really simple, but it was too complicated. I just played FIFA Career Mode. Yeah. Even from a really young age. So my football knowledge didn't come from actually watching football on TV. It didn't come from, other than Liverpool, because I really, really, really like Robbie Fowler. It came from playing games. And funnily enough, fast forward quickly for 30 so years, that's still the case now. My football understanding and knowledge comes from playing football games rather than watching football. So that was it was a really early introduction into the gaming side of football. And I wouldn't consider myself a gamer, and I didn't really play many other games. It was just mainly FIFA and watching this uncle play Football Manager. That was my early introduction into it anyway. Highfield Road memories, Robbie Fowler memories, and then I guess around about 14 years old, when I hadn't been to watch Coventry for a few years, it was a case of my mum saying, do you want to go and watch some football somewhere? It's your birthday. What do you want to do? And out of the blue, I want to go and watch Watford. And she was like, what? Watford? You're from Warwickshire. You're nowhere near Watford. You're on like an hour train journey away. What the hell do you want to watch Watford? And it was literally because on FIFA and on Football Manager, I just adored the yellow kit. It was as simple as that. The yellow kit was it, and I wanted to go and watch Watford. And that's where then a football team and following a football team probably became a thing. But at that point, obviously, I'm still playing grassroots football, local Sunday league, stuff like that. I played as a centre-back and was nicknamed the Rhino because I used to kick everybody. To the point where my Sunday league manager actually banned me for a week because I made such a dirty tackle on somebody the week before, and I remember being distraught about it as well. My own manager banning me.
Some kind of similar issue.
Yeah, I was literally nicknamed the Rhino. That was it. And the more angry I get, the more I just go around kicking people. I wasn't no special football player, but I had heart. And that was that. But yeah, so really early football games, particularly FIFA and Championship Manager, were introduced quite early, and distracted me from watching real football. I mean, I grew up in the early 90s, so football and TV, Premier League wasn't really a massive thing. It was all in its early inception, and it wasn't big, fancy Champions League. What was it? The modern Facebook didn't exist until I was like 17. Social media wasn't a thing.
So my football.
Yeah, my football was nothing online, all on a TV device. You know, those big old chunky TVs that go about 4 meters back. Yeah, it was all on that really. Which is, I get, very different to a lot of people you cross these days who are still into your FIFAs and so on. That was the early introduction anyway. I
think that's really interesting, that story of picking a team based on something that is almost devoid of any sporting sort of background. It's sort of...
It was just the colour.
Yeah,
it was just the colour. Yeah. And we went to the ground, and then Vicarage Road had half the stand was closed because it was falling down. It literally looked like a cowshed.
Oh
no! It was horrific. And that was the side where that was the side where the TV cameras would go on when they were on TV, because that was the side the dugouts were. And then you had the other side, which was more of a stand as such. But even just going into it for the first time, and just I always heard this thing about Watford, and it was a family vibe club, and I'd never felt anything like it before, other than my local non-league side, which was Leamington. Obviously, I grew up around Leamington Football Club because my family are quite entrenched in Leamington as a football club. Like now, this day and age, I've got 2 family members are major shareholders. My godfather is one of the financial guys at the top. I'm big on the board, and my uncle is the kit man.
Unbelievable.
So they're really entrenched in Leamington Football Club. So I kind of grew up going and watching Leamington, though I don't really remember that because I was probably under the age of like 8 or 9. I was very young. I don't remember much, but there's lots of photos knocking around of me like appearing in squad photos when Leamington had been promoted from like the Vanarama North. And I'm in the squad photo with all the players, and Kim Casey being the one that I remember the most because he was the one that got the furthest in his career. But obviously, go back in the day, at one point, Harry Redknapp managed or played for, I can't remember which one it was, Leamington. So I crossed him at quite a young age as well. And I think that had stuck. And I always remember Dion Dublin being quite nice to me as well, because obviously my uncle running the fan site at Cov, and Dion got on with him really well. And Dion would always buy me a Christmas present. So it was things like that where it was bizarre. My football experience didn't come from particularly watching football. Being around it was more of it.
That's amazing. That is really amazing. That's such a different story to. I think we've asked this question obviously now. 5th pod as of now, and we get, every time we ask the question, we get a completely different response in terms of where people come from, and that, I think that probably takes the prize for the greatest sort of.
It is a random way of picking a team based on colour, but you know what? I'm proud that I did, and not so proud of this season with Watford. But it's been an interesting journey, and it was very anti. And I always liked to be different. And every one of my friends at school, they were Villa fans, or they were Cov fans, or they were Liverpool, or they were United, and there was teams like that. And I picked a team that was way out there. At the time, they were like a relegation battling Championship side. But yeah, it's watching them grow up and change. It's been quite interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Not from particularly watching football, which is quite interesting. More from being around it and from different angles of video games and so on.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just sitting back and hearing and being like, just hearing it's amazing. But you spoke there. We're going to touch on it a little bit. I don't know how much you're going to want to talk about the current season. And I mean, as of the time of recording, Watford have day before recording, they lost 3-1 to Southampton. And I watched the game, they weren't particularly great. But I mean, if we can touch on what you think's happened this season, obviously.
It hasn't happened this season. It hasn't happened this season. It's been happening for the last 3 seasons. The problem with Watford is deeper than what the media see and deeper than what the average person that looks at Watford's results see. It's coming from our recruitment policy, from 2 particular sources in Duxbury and Giraldi, who are the director and the technical director. I don't know their titles exactly, but they are within that realm. They are one below the board, one above the manager. Yeah. Watford is always worked on, under the Pozzos, has always worked on a Italian model. And that is obviously the recruitment is done by the recruitment team, and then the manager's asked to work with the recruitment team. I've had no problem with it because at the beginning they did quite well. But over the last 3 years, this is like baffling that this is the thing. And the last 3 years, trying to remain in the Premier League, the only player Watford have brought in on a recruitment as a centre half is Craig Dawson.
What? That's mad. That's crazy.
How are you going to survive the Premier League with Championship defenders? And don't get me wrong, Cathcart has his day, as does Mariappa and so on, and Craig Dawson. It just isn't going to happen. And we've constantly gone out and brought attackers to try and plug gaps and pave and cover cracks. And Twitter can be an interesting place. However, Twitter and Watford is very truthful, and they speak some very home truths that I think the club really need to listen to. Our problem comes from between the board and the manager. I don't blame Pearson, and I don't blame any of the players, because I think they've been sold up a creek without a paddle type thing. And they're going to... I know people are saying they're not going to get relegated because this is a good year to be bad because there's so many bad teams. But I do think we'll go down. I think Bournemouth will pull themselves out of it, and I think we'll go down with Villa and Norwich.
Wow.
And then I really don't know what happens, because this has been a theme with the Pozzos for the last two clubs they've had. You look at Granada, who did so well for so long, and then all of a sudden disappeared into oblivion, and then they sold the club. Well, they didn't disappear into oblivion, but they just survived every single season. Then they were just surviving. And then the Granada fans had a bit of a revolt, and then they sold the club. And Udinese hasn't really done much apart from a couple of standout seasons here and there, and Watford seems to be falling into that gap as well. So I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one, but it's deeper than the players. It is a recruitment issue, and I think Duxbury would have gone if it hadn't been for Pearson saving his job. However, I think we're back in that area again, really. It could be troublesome times, and I don't mean financially troublesome times, but it could be troublesome times for Watford going forward.
I think you're spot on there when you speak about honesty. Wow, I don't think I could sit here and in good faith as a Brighton fan and say they're going to get relegated. But I mean, yeah.
It's almost like we need to get relegated. We don't need to, but we do need to. But
reset kind of thing.
Yeah, we can't keep getting lucky like we have. And don't get me wrong, if you see it on the Watford Twitter, Watford Twitter fans or the Watford Twitter football Twitter are genuinely very honest. Yeah, and it's one of the only football Twitters where I look at it and I can actually tolerate. And they are very honest, and they all will say the same thing. We've been riding the crest of a wave for a couple of years, and we've been damn right getting away with it. And we have been getting away with it. Moments like beating Liverpool this season have pulled us out of obscurity and saved our seasons. But this time it's all but too late. And when you've got like the recent thing, you've got two of our players couldn't even play at the weekend or against Southampton because they've been to a bloody party together where people with known coronavirus had been. So that shows the commitment of the players. Deeney, in my opinion, completely fair, had said he didn't want to come back because he has a young daughter or son who obviously has bad something wrong with them. I don't know what exactly, but he didn't want to come back and risk it, and I can get that. But and I don't question his commitment because he has shown above and beyond the commitment over the years, but you do have to question quite a few of the players' commitments. Yeah. Their hearts aren't in it. And I think it's been interesting coming back from this off period because you've really seen the good from the bad and the bad from the good. You can see who cares and who doesn't.
Yeah. One thing I just want to ask about, from the perspective of a Watford fan is how do you think Nigel Pearson's doing? Because from, I'm a Man United fan, Charlie's a Brighton fan. It seems that Nigel Pearson is working hard and Watford will fight for every single point. And as a Watford fan, what do you think about Nigel Pearson?
Pearson's been great. I mean, Pearson was the appointment we should have had at the start of the season. Because, and I hate having to say this, but we were floundering around with these foreign managers who do these very flamboyant systems, and that just wasn't our team. Yeah. We needed someone who knew the division, who would give anybody a rocket that needed it, and would be very, very simplistic and basic in their approach to the game. And Pearson has been that, but you can only do what you can do with the tools that you've got at your disposal. And right now, he doesn't really have the tools at his disposal. Right. I hope we keep him, and I hope he doesn't leave. He's on a short-term contract, so I don't know. But I think he's on an extension to finish this season, but I don't know what's happening going forward. The Pozzos are on it. I think they would have done something, or they have something lined up, because whenever we've moved managers, which has been quite a regular thing, and a lot of Watford fans get about, whenever we've moved managers, we've generally done better. This one, though, Pearson hasn't done better, but I don't particularly think it's his fault. I think he picked up the baton at the totally wrong time. And actually, the damage was done when we took back Kike Flores. That was the damage. We had got ourselves in trouble at the start of the season with Grazia, who had for some reason lost his way. But that seems to happen with all our managers. So you got to look at the upper of the club and think, what's going on? Why is this happening constantly? And then bringing back Kike and leaving 7 more games, that's what hurt us. We should have had Pearson straight after Grazia, but we didn't.
I think if you look from the start of the season where they were after Kike, I think personally they've improved a little bit compared to what they were. Sat rock bottom of the league.
Yeah.
But I can see what you mean. Like, listen, it's not where you want to be as a Watford fan, though.
No, it's just it's been coming for a few years. Like I say, I don't blame any of the players, despite some of them lacking obvious commitment, and I don't blame any of the actual coaching team. This has to fall solely on the directors in terms of the technical director, the football director, and the recruitment and the board. It has to fall solely on them. They have to stand up and take responsibility of this. At the end of the day, we're going to be hemorrhaging a lot of financial damage by going down. And there's players in this club right now that we've seen wages that we've not seen before at this club.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know what position Watford are in financially. I have no clue. We've just invested a whole load of money into the ground. The ground looks phenomenal now. So I know they're there for the long haul, the Pozzos, and then they've put a lot of money into the training ground as well, and they've really revamped everything. And I think that's always a good sign for any football club when people come in and ownerships and they actually put money into things they don't particularly need to change.
Yeah.
That's always a good sign. But when the off-field development doesn't match the on-field development, and the off-field development is so good and the on-pitch development is so bad, you got to wonder. One thing I love about Watford is the incorporation of like the multi-sensory rooms. They're the only club in the Premier League that has this stuff for children with autism, and giving them a platform to go and watch football games in a safe environment. That stuff is so cool. Like in the community, they are unreal, but they just ain't doing it elsewhere, and they're almost not ticking the wrong boxes, but they're definitely not ticking the right boxes.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that makes an awful lot of sense. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's a lot of direct comparisons that could be drawn with when Stoke got relegated. They were one of those sides, or Swansea, or one of those sides. And I think, unfortunately, it could be a case for a team like Brighton or a team that of Bournemouth this year, I think also have been suffering that same sort of problem, where it's very difficult. It's good to get recruitment right for the first couple of years in the Premier League, but it is very difficult to get recruitment right 6, 7, 8 years in a row, especially when, like you say, if you're only buying one centre-back in however many years. I think that's probably a bit of a shortcoming of the
This one of the biggest sad things that we've had with Watford is players that we've brought that we've never played and haven't been given a chance, have gone on and done fantastic in other places. Stephen Berghuis is a classic example. Never played for us. He was young, he was dynamic, he was fast, he was raw. He's a winger, an out-and-out winger, something we'd screamed for years. Let him go back to Feyenoord. He's Feyenoord's best flipping player. So it's like I know the Eredivisie isn't particularly comparable to the Premier League, but he was never given a chance. So how the hell can we ever know he was going to do anything? And he turned into like Feyenoord's best player for like 2 years since he left.
Absolutely.
So,
I can definitely I can see the shortfalls of the Eredivisie.
It's frustrating,
Absolutely.
Very frustrating.
But I think actually in your origin story, we're going to move on now a little bit move on and both look back. You spoke there about getting into Football Manager at a very young age.
Yeah.
About sort of when you got into it, and we've talked there about what you've seen as the problem at Watford, and I think that's quite a good place to jump into this. When you started playing Football Manager, like which one was your first Football Manager? How did you find it? I know you jumped in at quite a young age. I had a very similar start. How did you sort of find it as a beginning, let's say?
It was overwhelming to begin with. I used to play it only alongside my uncle, and he'd control and do his saves, or always Coventry saves, and I would just watch in awe and thinking, wow, this game is like so cool. I wish I could play it. But we didn't own a PC at home. I didn't grow up in the most well-off home. Parents split quite young when I was 12 years old. So no, I had a PlayStation, but having a PC that could run a game like that was pretty much of a no-go, really. So I only saw it whenever I went to his house. But for my GCSEs, and this is where it gets a bit interesting. For my GCSEs, my mum brought a PC. I didn't use it for my GCSEs. I used it to play Football Manager on the sly, or Championship Manager, should I say, on the sly. So my first one was 2001. I'm not academically smart. I think most people can see that. I make lots of spelling mistakes. I don't double check my tweets, and it's quite. But people have grown to just think it's quite funny now, rather than it being the internet police. Just leave me alone these days. They think, oh God, Fox has done it again. But I spent my time when I should have been doing whatever it would be for school, playing Championship Manager on the sly. It literally, and I say this hand on heart, nearly ruined my GCSEs. In fact, it probably attributed a big part of my GCSEs being quite poor, because I just didn't do any of my coursework and stuff like that. I was too busy playing the game. I was too busy trying to take Enfield from the conference to the bloody Premier League.
Relate to that.
So I played it for a few years before that, like late 90s, watching my uncle, as I say. But the real first one where I played it on my own was 2001, which I believe I got the demo out of a cereal box. That going back, that far back, and it was obviously just text. It was very simple. When a player retired, they came back as a regen somewhere else. that kind of very simple Football Manager times. Obviously, people, I think I would go down as far to say, I wouldn't say that 0102 is my favorite ever, but if you look on Twitter, the only one that's talked about the most in terms of being a classic is 0102 or 0001. One of those two are always the two that come up. And I'll be honest, and I've said this all the time, and I always say this to new players of the game. I just cheated all the time. I'd reload. I'd buy my own players. I'd do everything just to win a game. But I loved it, and I just remember loving spending that time. And hours would fly by, and you just be in awe at the whole thing. And I remember being Manchester United and dominating, and then moving down to Enfield. And obviously, then the years go on from 0102, and things like the Diablo tactic come up, and I was aware of like stuff on the internet about it. But that was pretty much 0102 was when I really got into it. Up until about, I want to say about 2010. Yeah. And then I disappeared from the game, because at that point there I was just turning into a young adult, 20ish years old, whatever, and other football things, funnily enough, had distracted me, and I stopped playing the game for a little while. But that was when I got into it early. I remember people like oh god, who would be the regens back then? The one I always remember to my favourite was a Swedish kid, really long name, I forget his name, it's gone out of my head now, Bakaloglu, or Berkaloglu.
Yeah.
There's loads, but that was when I got involved in it quite early. Back in the Championship Manager times, when it was obviously, then you saw the changeover with Idios taking over, and then it coming back as Football Manager. And I didn't even really know today actually what all happened there, but I remember it changing. But I was still playing a bit of career mode as well though on FIFA. But I'd always be the same teams. Brighton was one, Huddersfield, Colchester, Charlton, Watford, Bradford. I'd always be the same teams, and I'd repeat seasons again and again and again. And as soon as like the regens came in, I'd stop and start again, because I didn't really enjoy the regens. I like the real life players.
That's really interesting. That is really interesting. The transition there between wanting to use these real players and that's really great. So you've sort of moved there. We've gone to sort of 2010 around that area, and then obviously moving slightly further on. If you had to, I know we spoke there about, like I say, that sort of era at the beginning of the millennium seems to be one that is very sort of revered, unfortunately, a little bit before my time. But if you had to pick at the moment sort of the Football Manager, that not necessarily the best Football Manager, because I think we could be here for quite a while, or not, I mean, if we come into an agreement, but which sort of Football Manager would you say you have the affiliation with? Because I know it's often the Football Manager we have the best save with, or the best affiliation with, that we think is probably
I think a clear favourite by an absolute country mile, and probably still just about my favourite FM ever, would be 2018, and that was purely because of Casapia. Something happened within my life that will be a memory forever with the Casapia thing. I can't. It makes me sad at the same time, because I don't have too much historical reference back to that save, other than the clips that are on the channel. But that save was just something else. I'd never played a save past probably 5 to 8 seasons, and I'd never enjoyed, as I mentioned, I'd never enjoyed new gens or regens. I'd never enjoyed them, and Casapia just changed everything. And I don't know how it happened. I don't know why it happened. I still to this day don't understand it, but it was just something extremely different. And I'd been creating content for a few years and probably hadn't found my niche anywhere. And then that landed. So the game was good that year. I felt the game was really balanced. I think that's probably the best balanced game they've had.
Yeah.
It might not be the best, but I think it's the best balanced game they've had. It didn't feel like there was any breaks in the game. It didn't feel like anything was particularly wrong. Obviously, it hadn't had the new training module and stuff into it, and the game certainly outside of the match engine has made massive steps in the last couple of years. But that game will always scream at me, one, because I felt it was so well balanced, and two, because of Casapia. Definitely.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's probably a good moment to jump into Casapia. I know it's on my list here of things to mention. I mean, in preparation for this podcast, I went and I looked back through, and I was just like, even as a viewer, I vividly remember bits of that save, and I'm like, and I think an affiliation, to come at it from a viewer's point of view, I followed that save from all the way back, all the way down the leagues to having an aging Riyad Mahrez play for that team to selling a right back for £200 million
Yeah, that's
to
mad.
Manchester City. And I was just, I think that was one of the first saves that went as long as that did.
I think it still holds the record on Twitch as the longest streamed Twitch save. But it's got Inter Berlin staring it down though.
Yeah, I did think that actually. I was looking through. I was like,
Inter Berlin, I think will pass it in terms of years.
But I think it's fantastic, and I think it actually did. It did a lot for the overall community in general. That save.
Yeah, people talk about it still that I never realised would watch it or knew a part of it, and it's mad that I still get in the chat now. I still get people referencing Casapia and certain things that happened. Maybe if it had 30 seasons, maybe even like seasons that were like season 7 and 8, they remember things that it's had some of the maddest. And Inter Berlin does top it in certain areas at the moment, but it has had some of the maddest happenings I've ever had in Football Manager. My ultimate Football Manager moment ever, and I get goosebumps just talking about this. So in season 7 or 6, we were a mid-table, nothing Liga NOS side. I was about to throw my PC out the window on a regular occasion because we couldn't get it right. And we got through, the clip is still knocking around actually, we got through the best new gen at new gen level when he comes in I've ever had. And his name was Paulo Silva. And Paulo Silva was 16 years old and made his first team debut a week later. Paulo Silva was on the bench and we put him on the last couple of minutes to make him the youngest player to ever play for Casapia. And we got a penalty. The chat are going wild. Put Silva on it. Put Silva on it. This kid is born in Casapia. He's a Casapia fan. He's everything Casapia. He steps up in the 89th minute and misses. And the chat are gutted. Absolutely gutted. Let's fast forward though. We fast forward 15 seasons. 15 seasons. We're about season 25, 26 now. And he has now become the all-time appearance maker for Casapia, being a Casapia boy. He has carried us, yet he has never broke into the international scene because he had a couple of injuries early on that meant he didn't quite reach his potential ability.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's clear ahead of everybody else in the team. And we're playing our final league game to win, I think, something like our 8th or 9th consecutive Liga NOS. We put him on as a goodbye because he wanted to leave and we agreed to transfer to Galatasaray. And he'd been with us for, we're talking 18 seasons at this point. And his playing time had been decreased and we respected his decision to want to go. We put him on with about 10 minutes to go as a goodbye. We get a penalty. The chat, Paulo Silva, Paulo Silva. I'm like, this isn't happening.
The scenes.
He steps up and on his final game, he bags the penalty and then leaves the pitch. And I get goosebumps just thinking about it now. You cannot write a more poetic story for your homegrown, best ever Casapia new gen to come through, to miss a penalty on the opening day and to bag one on his last ever day, becoming like he was already an ultimate legend for the team. It was just a moment. I don't ever remember him scoring another penalty. That's the mad thing as well. It's the only one I ever remember him like taking, those two. And it's just goosebumps when I just think about it now. Like that story had like 15 years it waited.
I definitely think that is what is so perfect about Football Manager, that the stories that it creates, and that, as you said there, you remember it over that period of time.
Yeah,
it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke there about legends, and I think if Football Manager on Twitch had to have a mascot, I think Stanley probably comes pretty close.
Oh my god! To
the top of that list.
I played that clip actually the other day on stream because some people didn't know what it was. Mate, I speak to him semi-regularly on Facebook. It's mad. Yeah, it's mad. He's still playing, obviously, in the lower leagues of Portugal, but he's such a lovely guy. And we used to send him all kinds of stuff that he used to do in the stream, and he was so appreciative. And obviously, he sent me a video saying, "Welcome to Fox in the Box," and it was so cool. That is a mental thing, to be fair. Yeah, Stanley's a legend.
Yeah,
absolute legend.
I think if in the dictionary they needed a picture for definition of cult hero.
Oh,
I think Stanley comes pretty close.
There's so many things that happen in that Casapia save that I can't even begin to think. They come up every now and again in your head, and you just sit there smiling, and the chat have a nostalgic moment every now and again. 10 years to win the Liga NOS, which was bearing in mind with 15 seasons in with Inter Berlin and nowhere near winning the Bundesliga yet. But 10 seasons to win the Liga NOS and 20 seasons then to win the Champions League. And the most, probably one of the most fitting things, and this happened by accident really, is Portuguese league has got good teams like Porto, Sporting, and Benfica. Everyone knows this, but they generally fall quite short in Europe. However, when we finished in season 30, the Europa League was contested by Boa Vista versus Belechinese. I think I'm saying that right. And the Champions League final was contested by Casa Pia and Vitória Guimarães, or however you say their name. It was all contested by all Portuguese sides, none of the considered big Portuguese sides, because we turned that league into a absolute field of talent. We were so rich. We had 2 billion as a transfer budget. We were so rich that we would buy players just to give them to other teams in our league, and we'd still win our league without losing a game. However, those teams were in Europe just incredible. And I don't think I've ever had it. I guess, you hear these building a nation saves. I guess in a way it was a building a nation save, even though Portugal has a pretty set good 3 teams anyway. But it was just something different. Something very different.
I think it was a prototype on Twitch of having that longer term, slightly slower burn of a save that actually wasn't just get to a Champions League final and that's it.
Yeah, it was out there. It was very niche compared to what people were doing.
Absolutely.
And I believe along the way, it was kind of where I found my pocket of content and where I found where I lived. I am by no means a knowledgeable person at Football Manager. I forget things too quickly. I have a brain like a sieve, but I really enjoy squad building. And that comes back from a FIFA thing when FUT used to be a thing. Because I would play FUT way more than I would play Football Manager back when FUT became a thing. And I love the squad building. I love the thought of building a team which has chemistry, a team which has cohesion. And that was where I started to show people a little bit of my long-term squad building to do with DNA and the areas I'd look for a particular player to all link together. So then they would have a cohesive team. And I think in a way it helped me find my pocket of content, but it also opened up people's minds to playing FM in a different way. And then since then, we've had some people come into the community, both from a creator's aspect or a blogger's aspect or a video creator or a streamer or whatever. And the game now, and it's not just off me. Don't get me wrong, there's hundreds of other people out there that do the same stuff who are, again, but it kind of, we at the same time all brought this. You can just play Football Manager in a very different way. You don't have to just buy the best players or be the best teams or click and play. You can do little caveats on your own, which aren't in the game. And that's kind of bled into Berlin now. And I think 2 years on from Casa Pia, Inter Berlin's landed at just the right time. The whole streaming thing's landed at just the right time for me. It's quite a bizarre situation. And in the Munster world crisis, some door opened for me. But yeah, Casa Pia was something different. And it definitely changed the way that people viewed me as a player of the game and viewed maybe the way the game was played.
Absolutely. I think that leads, just for people that are listening and maybe want to know a little bit more about how your time in FM20 has been. And I mean, we can't talk about FM20 and Fox in the Box without talking about Inter Berlin. I feel like they go so hand in hand that I feel like we need to...
FM20, first and foremost, in my opinion, has been the worst Football Manager for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And I'll throw that one out there straight away, up until December anyway. Whatever they did in December, they changed the game completely, match engine based. Outside of the match engine, the game was always improving. The fact that they come up with these new inventive things every year surprises me. I don't know how they do it. If people say to me all the time, what do you want to have in 2021? I don't have a clue. The transfer page in the club feedback thing needs to look nicer. That's literally all I can say. They always come up with something that they add to it, and I don't know how they do it. I don't know where these things come from is incredible. I couldn't think of them. I moaned for years about training and training being rubbish, and so much so when I met Miles for the first time, he was like, you're that guy that moans about training all the time.
Yeah, Miles, having
that was
around Miles,
that's one of our later questions ticked off the list then.
So he remembered me for that, because I always moan that training was just crap. And don't get me wrong, this training module now is better, but it still could do with being better. But the match engine based 20 FM20, I despised the game. I literally hated it. I would not play it for the first till December. I hated it. It was rubbish. And everyone knows like the whole VAR stuff, the whole one shot, one goal, the 1-on-1s, everything was just a disaster. And I don't know why or how that happened, but they did seem to have, they definitely did address it. And since December, probably one of my favorite alliterations of the game. But then at the same time, it ties in with, as you say, an Inter Berlin thing. It ties in with something else. So whether it's the save that you enjoy that makes you enjoy the game more, or the game itself, I don't quite know where I sit on that. But I do know that this year's game was for me the worst to begin with, anyway. So we just finished a Reading save, which was, funnily enough, was my alpha save back when I went back to the alpha event. So I'd had that save since October. So I'd been playing it all the way up until like February, and was technically the longest running save probably in FM ever. Like now in this current FM cycle, because it had started in October back on the alpha, and I'd been reluctant of picking a save because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was working full time. I'd just come back from living on the Isles of Scilly again, and I didn't really know where everything was. But we were streaming semi-regularly and kind of finding a bit of a rhythm through January and February. Then COVID happened. And I, working for a small family business, knew what was coming straight away. As soon as they announced the furlough thing, I knew I was going to be on it. And furlough was announced, and literally within 10 minutes, Lee, you furloughed. I was like, right, okay, let's take an opportunity here. We've got some headway with streaming. We had just finished our Reading save. And I thought, let's try and find a save now that I can stream 2-3 times a week at random times for long periods, and start from the bottom and give it some longevity. The stream were already asking, let's go do a lower league save, let's redo Casapia, let's go back to Portugal. And I was like, I can't redo Casapia. You just can't do that. It's never going to happen. I will never return to Portugal because that save is so legendary. I've spoiled Portugal for myself now. So I can't do that. And they were like, all right, let's go and find a lower league save. So here we are. We load up German leagues. We load up the Dutch leagues, lower league. I didn't really feel the Dutch teams. I just didn't. It wasn't enough of them. But the German league appealed to me from the 6th tier, because in the 6th tier there's 31 leagues, of which each league has 20 plus teams. So I was like, there is literally like 70 plus teams to pick from here. There is a lot of teams to pick from. There's over 100 teams. So we've sifted through a few, and I've got a process where I follow with picking a team, which seems to work quite well. And my process is, first and foremost, what's your favorite color? Take your favorite color, pick teams with your favorite color. When you've got your favorite color and you've got 3 or 4 teams, pick the favorite badge. When you've picked the favorite badge, load up a manager, have a very simple database, go in and look at the club. Is it hemorrhaged with debt? Has it got a history? And those 3 things there. And then eventually you'll narrow down to 1 or 2 clubs, then go to Wikipedia and read about the club. Who are they? What is their real life ethos, and can you buy into it? Too many people do saves, and then within a minute they're like, oh, I'm bored of this, because they haven't invested into the club. So straight away we got down to 2 clubs. We got down to Lokomotiv Leipzig, and we got down to Inter Berlin. Lokomotiv weren't in the bottom division, so that was already a mark against them. As soon as I went to Wikipedia and saw Inter Berlin's ethos and who they were, I was like, this is the one. This is the one. They're all about anti-radicalism, anti-racism, all inclusion, everything. Everything is all inclusive. They're a grassroots club that has no sponsorships and has no racism on all of their shirts, and just everything I could get behind. Go on.
I just think that's insane how much like research you put into each save. I think it's brilliant because it definitely shows how much you care about in the save.
Yeah, you have to. You have to be invested before you invest. You have to. It's impossible to pick a save just randomly and it work. I mean, that does happen, don't get me wrong. But so many people are like, I started this and I ain't really feeling it. And well, invest by investing some time into learning who the club are. But then it occurred to me that we had a German striker in the Reading save who was a little bit of an anomaly. And what I mean by anomaly was during season 11, we won the Champions League finally after having 2 defeats with Reading. And we had this lad called Christian Bolzer. And he went missing on 5 occasions during the season to do with alcohol-related problems, like genuinely in the game. So he was caught out by the paparazzi 5 separate occasions in 1 season. But he was a really good player, and we brought him for an £87 million release fee from Bayer Leverkusen. So we knew we had a player that could become the manager, because I don't like putting myself in as manager. I like using narratives of previous saves. So we knew we had one German player at Reading, and we knew he was a good player. He was a little bit out there. He was 21, and we went back and we looked at him, and where the hell was he born? Berlin. We were like, this is like written in the stars. There's something here that is colliding. Like, he is from Berlin, and we found this Inter Berlin club who I absolutely can get behind, and he is from Berlin. So we put him in as our manager. We made up a little story that he had retired because of his off-field reasons, and he basically wanted to make Inter Berlin the best club in the world, and he wanted to do it in the way that Berlin believe in, which is having a multinational representation, a youth development system. We literally hardly have any Germans in the team. We have a Sudanese player, we have a Vietnamese player. We've got such a variation of players, and we followed the Inter Berlin ethos. The only thing we couldn't follow was obviously the financial thing. We can't not pay players or sell or buy players because we'd never get anywhere. And if anyone can win the Champions League with amateur players, shout out to them. But that was never going to happen. So we changed the badge, brought the badge up to date, but we had all like a black hand and a white hand, in unity. And this save was then born. And we spent, about 10 seasons or so to get to the Bundesliga. Had a little bit of a 3-season stint in one division in tier 4, because it was quite hard to get out of, because there was a lot of semi-pro teams, pro teams in there with semi-pro teams, or we were semi-pro, and a lot of clubs which are former history from the Bundesliga and so on fallen away. But every other division we got out of straight away, including the third Liga and the Bundesliga 2. And we found ourselves in the Bundesliga with the most smallest budgets in any way you can, every single way. We were tiny. And this is mad, our sponsorship income was 175 grand a year. Second bottom was 10.5 million. So we stood no chance. We stood no chance.
The odds.
Yeah, we stood no chance. We were down to finish bottom. Our wage bill, if I can remember, second from bottom was 525k per year, and ours was 115,000 or something like that. Anyway, the first season, a miracle happened somehow, and we hung on and we stayed up. We finished 14th, which is just above the relegation playoffs. But we did have to leave it to the last 6 games of the season, where we won 4 in a row, and I think we drew 2 and won 2, which obviously got us to 32 points and kept us up. 32 points is the minimum in the league to stay up. Following season, though, my worst football manager season ever. It was terrible. I was terrible. I couldn't get any rhythm, and we got relegated bottom. So first ever relegation on stream. But it was really weird, because something was changing in the channel, because for the first time ever, I think in most regular viewers of my streams and other streams, they'd found somebody struggling, and couldn't find the right formula, and somebody was losing constantly on stream, and it was a really, really weird thing. And we did go through a lot of teething problems with people trying to say, "Oh, change this," the backseat gaming type thing.
Yeah.
And I just kept saying, and the stream just kept saying, just let it roll, let it happen. It's all part of the story. It is all part of the story. But that really was obscure, I think, for people to understand that actually someone loses at the game who I consider quite good. It was a bizarre, and obviously I'm at this point now back in streaming. I'm not full time at this point, but I'm considering it because it's going so well. And I'm trying to shake the narrative that Fox is good at the game, because Fox is okay at the game. He's not good at the game. And I'm trying to shake this. I'll be honest, as much as the Creators Cup and winning the Creators Cup was a good thing for me, it was also a death sentence as well. Because it gives people a opinion of it that you shouldn't lose. And I'm sure we'll cross it at some point. And that didn't help me in the Streamer Showdown. People had the wrong opinion of me and enjoyed watching Fox lose. But I was trying to, through this losing of Inter Berlin, I was breeding a community and building a community that were different, that I'd never had before. They didn't look at me in the same way that the previous community had looked at me. And the older guys that hung around were changing as well. And Fox wasn't just becoming this cardboard cutout, want to be good at the game. Fox was becoming some kind of entertainer, which was a really weird space to be in. And I've got some really cool clips that do a little montage together. And I look back and I watch it, and I'm proud of myself, which is really weird, because I could see me as a creator changing. And I was becoming less about the game and more about the character and more about the person. And Inter Berlin really infused that and helped me achieve that. But we got relegated, and that relegation season, was the biggest turning point in this save, because outside of Football Manager stuff, outside of it just changed me and it changed everybody, because people were all of a sudden on board. They're like, right, this is down. Let's buckle in. He's rose the division semi-easily. Now it gets hard. Let's see what he does. And we picked up some good young players along the way, and we were playing a very young first team. We got promoted again after the relegation, so we were back in the Bundesliga. The first season's back in the Bundesliga. We hit 11th, which was like an all-time high. But we were struggling the whole season, and then pulled it back around in the last 10 games. And then our second stint, our second time in the Bundesliga and our second season in the Bundesliga, the whole second season syndrome stuff, we literally saved our asses on the final game of the season to stay up. And it was like, at this point, I was like, man, this is like a roller coaster. I can't take this any longer. Mate, I was in the gutter. I was like, I can't do this, boys. I'd rage, not rage quit, but I'd finish one stream early because I'm like, guys, I can't do this. This is just too much for me now. Like, I need a break, because I'm streaming like 6 times a week at this point and playing it quite regularly. And though I'm absolutely loving it, because finally it's not solely about the game, it's about the community, and I'm just loving the interaction and so on. But I'm like, I can't do this. Anyway, we went away after this relegation season, came back with the same team except for one player, which was a centre-back on loan from Real Madrid. And we turned this team that finished 3 points outside of relegation because of a win on the final day of the season. And in the 5th season in the Bundesliga, excluding the relegation season, we finished 4th. And we finally turned it around. There's many little caveats and stories along the way of crazy things that happened. And if you want me to throw a few at you, I will. But for me, the most poetic thing of all of this happened today. And we played our first ever Champions League game. And it was against Inter Milan.
Oh my.
And you just can't write that. It was at our home ground against Inter Milan. The team that Inter Berlin, very much colour-wise, is based off. Yeah. And it was the inspiration behind Karl-Heinz Hamburger, the founder. Inter Milan was his inspiration. And we played against them in our first ever Champions League game. We drew 1-1. But that happened today. But like things like that in Football Manager, that just reminds me of like the Paulo Silva situation. Like, how does that even happen? How is that even a thing? How does that become a thing? Like, how does Football Manager write those kind of stories?
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, I'll throw one other story at you. We have a redemption system in the channel where if people have been in the channel for so long and earned so many what they call biscuits or channel points, they can redeem it and they can rename any player under 22 from a country that they pick. The first ever goal scorer for us in the Bundesliga was a subscribers player who was called Toe Madeira, funnily enough. But like that story's written a season and a half before. He was the first ever changed player, and it happened to be that he became available to us in the window. We took him on loan, and he was our first ever Bundesliga goal scorer. So the first ever Champions League goal scorer again was another subscribers player. They don't change my players because I don't let them change my players because I want my players to be organic. I don't want them to be one name one day and one different name another day. I want them to stay the same. But if they get them before I get them, then that's fair game. And our first ever Champions League goal scorer was a chap called Dennis Arnal, which is a renamed subscribers player. There's just so many mad things that have happened in this save. I just couldn't even begin to, like, from stadium drama where we've had 2 stadiums in 10 years to what else was happened in there? The multiple promotions, the relegations, the selling of players through our board. This is mad, actually. Our chairman was due to be taken over because he was under a transfer embargo, and he sold my player the day before he left, my goalkeeper.
No way.
Literally the day before he left. The season's 2 games in, and he's called Mark Dobner, but we call him Mark Nobner. And he literally 2 days before he left, while I'm under a transfer embargo because of a takeover, he sold my goalkeeper, my only goalkeeper. So there's so many little stories, more than I could even think off the top of my head. But yeah, it really has, the Inter Berlin thing and FM20, it really has turned my life upside down. And I don't mean just in terms of the save itself, but it's had an exterior effect on my life. Yeah. Like, I've become a full-time creator, which I would have never dreamed of. And that is down to, first and foremost, my community. And secondly, the fact that I'm so invested into the save that they are also invested in it. And I think I think they can see it's genuine as well, that I genuinely enjoy doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. I think, like I say, you just don't. It seems like this year, and I think this applies to yourself, I think, almost as the prime example, but there have been examples across, I think, the FM community this year where there's almost been, at levels there hasn't been maturity from certain audience members, but there's been almost a maturity in the storytelling of Football Manager this year, where people have been able to get relegated or to lose in big games, and people almost love that more. It's almost like Football Manager now has.
It's really changing. No, it's really changing. The community is really changing. You look at the community. I've been in the community for about 6 years. You look at it 2 years ago to now, it is a polar difference.
Yeah, there's just so much diversity, I think, in the stories that are being told in the game, and like you say, the things that people bring to the game are now so much. There's so much depth to it, and there's so much that is being brought around it, and whether that be in single player games or even, we can talk about it in a minute, but talking about these events where people are building narratives together as well and building these stories, it almost has less in common with football and more in common with just storytelling in general, whether that be the whole gambit of Hollywood and all those sorts of things, where actually people like to see the hero lose a bit.
Yeah.
And they like to see their main character, he gets beaten up every now and then, or he gets relegated every now and then. Do you know what I mean? Like, they like to see someone struggle because it makes that victory. I think it makes the victory sweeter when you've had to really fight for it.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I've learned is my chat absolutely, like, I've never seen it so explode so much when I watch back the clip of, well, not the clip, but the stream of me winning on the final day of the season to stay up. I've never seen it so happy. It was partying like we won the Champions League 10-0. It was crazy. And it's only things like that where, and I do kind of recall back to Casapia, and I do see the similarities, but at that time, maybe I in myself was too young and too naive and too not understanding of the significance of that struggle and what made Casapia. And it was called the Casapia struggle, but I didn't maybe understand the significance of that struggle. I now go forward to Inter Berlin, and it hasn't just been a 6-season struggle, it's been a 15-season struggle. And I look at it now and I see why the community in 2018 and prior to that, for certain other saves, got me partnered. And we got partnered at a time where getting partnered was really hard. Not to take anything away from the guys now, but the Twitch requirements then were very different to what they are now. Back then, it was like 400 concurrent viewers, or 800 concurrent viewers, but FM, because it was a niche market, you were allowed a bit further down. Now it's a substantial amount less than that. Twitch has become more inclusive, which is fantastic. But we did it at a time where it was a huge, huge challenge for a community that was not very big. This community has grown so much and is not even probably 20% of what it could be. It's still going, but it's great seeing, obviously, more recently people coming across like Nepenthes and Manny and Spen and James Walcott and other people that are bringing new audiences. That's super cool. But I didn't really understand the significance of that struggle and what it meant. I now do, and having a community now that is open to you losing and not just giving you that, you bottled it, you lost your crap at the game. We've dropped that completely. And when I go in other people's streams now, it seems like that is changing. It's become like, I don't know if this is the right word or not, but when I started to where I am now, the game seems to be, it's more complicated and it requires more attention, but it's less systematic. Like, you're actually seeing personalities and people rather than ahead of the game. And this game is so dry. Let's be honest. It is not a content creator's dream. It's really not. Which is why when you get narratives painted for you, like the Inter Milan Champions League thing, you've got to grab them, and you've got to be astute and aware enough to know that this needs pushing to the audience because this is fucking cool. This is really cool, and it doesn't happen very often. Because so often and this is what I always say to new creators that come into it and new streamers. You have to engage them, and you have to see what you're doing. So many other streamers, I can guarantee, would have had cool saves like this Inter Berlin was in streaming, but yeah, it doesn't go outside of their stream that no one ever sees it. And that was a really big learning curve for me, during this save, about just share the story. But yeah, no, it's mad. it's mad the situation I find myself in now.
I mean, that's a sensational, just the whole. Yeah, I think that says a lot about you as a creator, though, as well. I think that you did it in a time where it was difficult to do, and you feel like you're still growing. I think that's the sign of someone that clearly knows what they're doing, and I think that's one of the most important things I think I've seen from completely removed from that situation up until fairly recently, where it's seeing you, like you say, people have to bring a lot of their own story to a game to be able to make it, and that's why I think you see at the very top of the FM community, which would definitely put you as one of those at the top table. They are the stories that people bring from completely different formats. There are people that will bring you, it's like 20% Football Manager and it's 80% the story I bring to it, or it's 50-50. Or I think the percentage differs, but I think people are seeing now that when you bring that personality to it, audiences will engage. And I think audiences that would usually be looking at other games are now, like you say, are being brought across because of people, but are also finding their way to a game that actually it's as much about the face in the bottom corner as it is about the things going on in the rest of the 80% of the screen. And I think that's what's keeping audiences, whereas before maybe it wasn't keeping the audience.
You actually raised the point there that I mentioned the other day. So obviously there has been a big growth recently, and it has been great for bigger creators from other games to come across, particularly FIFA. But someone in the chat the other day was like, "Oh, it's so cool seeing these new people come across and share their and so on." And it really is, and the community grows better because of them. But I also would like to, at the same time, when I said this on stream, I was like, also to shout out the guys that are Football Manager streamers first and foremost, and do it regularly to a good level, because they keep people here. It's not just about the people coming across. Great, people bring new people across, but those people are keeping people here. They're keeping people coming back, and sometimes people within the community who are just in this community solely and don't go to other communities are not given the credit they deserve. And there's several streamers that hold between 25 and 75 viewers that wouldn't consider themselves as well known or big, but they do a fantastic job of keeping people here. And they will grow with time, and they are growing with time. We've seen it with the most recent case in Zealand. He has streamed for a couple of years before anything happened as a completely different name. It does happen. People do come out of that pocket down below. The pocket down below right now is really difficult because there's just so many people in there. But there are people in there with the smaller numbers that even I flick around all the streams, and I like to know what people are doing. I'm a bit nosy like that. I like to see what's happening, who's a new person coming out. And there are people down there below 10 viewers that are genuinely really good. Two I can think of straight away, FM Works and Josh Peach. Two really entertaining people, but they hold very small viewerships. But in time, with time and consistency, they'll find something.
Josh is a very close friend of the pod. He was our first guest.
Was he? Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
Josh is really good.
He's fantastic. He will always downplay himself, but he's
a lovely lad.
Really fantastic, and he deserves a bigger audience than he gets. But he's very, very downplaying it. His very clear abilities, and he's taking his skills to YouTube now.
Yeah,
and
no, he's good. He's good.
Huge stuff. But yeah, let's not.
It's not about
10 minutes. Let's leave Josh alone. I think his ego's probably big enough from those last few minutes. Bless him. But I think, there's more questions. I think we've just covered. Honestly, I don't know about you if you've got any other questions, but I feel like we've hit everything on the checklist for me when it comes to what we were going to talk about. And I can only thank you, Foxy, for coming on, because it's been educational and inspirational at the same time.
No, that's all good, man. I feel like I've talked an awful lot, but hopefully, hopefully you've got out of me what you were kind of looking for, really. Hopefully it comes across not just as it can happen to anybody. I am no special person. I've just found my niche, and this is what I say to all new creators: find what applies to you, and that might be the same thing as somebody else. It doesn't matter if that's the case. I know I barely go on Twitter anymore because there's stupid arguments on that, and I know I've seen people recently saying about, oh, this save was mine and that save was mine. You forget all that. Whatever is your niche, and run with it. If someone else, Lelujo does a bottom to top type thing. If someone else does bottom top type thing, so on, it doesn't matter. There's only so many different types of stage you can do, but that's your niche. Then find your niche. Don't float around. Try and find it by floating around, obviously, but don't just float around and do anything. Find what you enjoy doing. For me, I have stopping gaps between saves, which are short-term saves, but ultimately I'm always looking for the next down the bottom, build them up. And once you find your niche and you find what you genuinely enjoy, it will come across. And when it comes across, that's really, really, really important. And I think I did a tweet last night, actually, just with a little video recap of this save, saying something. I can't quite see it at this moment in time. Oh, it's there. And it says, it says consistency, community. This is what I've learned in the past couple of months is consistency creates community. A community, then you need to reflect. When you've reflected and you've developed, it all leads to creating memories. And those memories are the things that bring people back. People come back because they have an affiliation, they have something they want to see, they have something they want to develop, they have something they want to discuss from previous. The amount of people I have back from Casapia, it baffles me. They remember more than I do. And what I'm doing now is planting seeds for 21, where they'll come back and remember it into Berlin. And that is what your community is there for. They're there as a memory bank for you. But keep hold of those memories, clip things, download things, keep them. And that's what I've definitely learned in the last few months, definitely.
I think today has been very educational, and as Charlie says, and it will help these new upcoming streamers improve and take advice from you. But Charlie, wouldn't you say that would wrap everything up?
Yeah, I think that just brings us so beautifully to the end. I was going to ask for your sort of advice for people new to the community, but I think that's just you smashed it out of the park without me even asking a question.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah, as I say, thank you so much for watching the Halftime Cuppa Football Manager podcast. A massive thank you to my co-host Charlie Pumfrey. Where can we find you, mate?
You can find me on Twitter at PumpfreyFM and over on Twitch at Pumfrey on Twitch.
I can't speak today, so I'm great for a podcast, aren't I? You can find me on Twitch at IJ011 and at IJ011_ on Twitter. And a final huge thank you to the main man himself, Foxy. Where can we find you, mate?
Well, shout out to you guys first and foremost. You do a cracking job, and again, apologies, I've just flown with it, but I'm glad we've covered everything we needed to, and it's been really good fun actually to chat about football. But everything is literally Fox in the Box FM. I'm one of the very few people that actually has everything the same. But yeah, it's all Fox in the Box FM.
Lovely, thank you, mate. Thank you, ladies and gents, and be back next week for another brilliant episode. That's me out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.